in my eye. This is the greatest moment in my life. When you walk around this world and you tell everybody you're number one, the only way you get to stay number one is to be number one.
And that's what we are here, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening and welcome to the Captain Lou Extravaganza live here on the 12-Ounce Sports Network. Yours truly, Captain Lou, here with you tonight until 10 o'clock Eastern Time, bringing you the best in what's going on in the world of sports. It is the Tuesday before the big one, Super Bowl 55, and it's going to be a great game. I think it's going to be an awesome game. We'll go through that. We'll make our predictions in the last half hour of the show. We get a packed show, and I want to start it off here in a couple of moments. The big news out of here in the Detroit area, of course, it happened Saturday night. It was the big trade. Matthew Stafford going to the LA Rams for Jared Goff, a couple of first-round picks and a third-round pick. I had a chance last Thursday night to sit down and talk to Logan Lamourdier. He writes for SI Sports Illustrated now. He's their Detroit Lions beat reporter. And it's funny, as we will say in the interview, that this is a caveat because we don't know what's going to happen. We weren't sure where Matthew Stafford was going to go. But I had a chance to sit down with Logan. We talked about what's going on in Motown at Allen Park with the new hires, the whole situation with the year. So I want to take you to that interview now, but I want to preface this by saying that joining us at the bottom of the hour, Mark Van Vliet at 8:30. We're going to talk ACHA hockey, Aquinas College in particular, kind of what they did to get ready for the season starting in February, the last weekend before February, and what's in store for them coming up the rest of the year. And at 9 o'clock, we've got Steve Finnemore stopping by. We're going to talk college basketball, NBA hoops, and, of course, the passing of John Chaney last weekend at the age of 89, one of the pillars of basketball over the last 50 years. So Steve's kind enough to stop by. And then we'll talk football, Super Bowl style. We'll really get into the Matt Stafford trade and the quarterback situation in the NFL. But I want to take you now to the interview I conducted with Logan Lamourdier on the Captain Lou Extravaganza guest line, which is sponsored, by the way, by Ken Ryan at Voya Financial Advisors. Give him a call at 517-420-5669. Let's take it away now with Logan Lamourdier from Sports Illustrated. And welcome back to the Captain Lou Extravaganza live here on 12-Ounce Sports and Zingo TV channel 761. And as promised, we're being joined live by Logan Lamourdier. He is from SportsIllustrated.com, all things Detroit Lions. And Logan, boy, we've got a lot to talk about. Just before we came on, we were talking, it might be the off season, but man, you got a lot of work ahead of you yet.
Yep, this was an atypical offseason for the Lions. Not only all the coaching hires, which obviously anytime there's a new regime that comes in, there's so much homework to be done just on potential guys. And then once the coaches and the general manager are hired and all the personnel that they bring with them, there's always research to do on that. But then, the whole Matthew Stafford bomb was dropped as well, that they're going to be parting ways. So there's just a lot going on there. There's speculation and trying to figure out where would be a good spot, trade value, just listening to all the different rumors that are floating around out there. So there is a lot going on, and technically the season's not even over yet. It is for the Lions, but in the NFL, there's still the Super Bowl to be played, and the Senior Bowl is going on this week. So if you're big into the draft, that's important, and free agency is not even here yet. So there's endless homework to do, I feel like, at this point.
Well, I want to preface everybody with this, that this interview, I normally don't do this, but this interview is taking place on the last Thursday night before the show. And the reason I'm saying that is by the time we air this on Tuesday night, Matthew Stafford might be traded away. So I want to be I want to be transparent with it. Were you surprised, Logan, that they agreed to part ways on either side?
Not really. From Stafford's perspective, he's 33 years old. He's still in his prime for quarterback years. He's still got at least a few good years left. Considering his arm strength, I feel like he could play if he's 40, if he wanted to. You see that even with other guys. And from him, it's like, going through another rebuild and not really seeing maybe a light at the end of the tunnel with this Detroit team, and knowing that he has a few really strong years left. I don't blame him for wanting to win. And I think he's done good. He's really been supportive of the team and has always backed them. So I don't blame him whatsoever for wanting out. And then even from a Lions perspective, I've always been very pro Stafford, but I even wrote an article in December basically stating that it might be best for the team if they were to move on from Stafford, just considering the timelines of where Stafford's at in his career and where the Lions are at in a rebuild. And yes, you're not going to hear general manager Brad Holmes call it a rebuild. It's a retool. But when it comes down to it, they have a lot of building that they have to do and a lot of roster turnover they're going to have and a lot of new players they're going to have to bring in. And it's just going to be, with Stafford's age, he has 2 years left on his contract. And the Lions, if the trade value that they have for him right now, it's not going to go up. It's only going to decrease. Right. And so in 2 years, when he's ready for a new contract, would the Lions just let him walk, or would they try to trade him before that comes up anyways, or would they try to re-sign him? Who really knows? But I just think at this point, the expectations are probably fairly low right now, especially next season where winning isn't going to be expected. So why not try to get some draft picks and really build up the draft capital, because they don't have a lot right now, and build up this team and get that young quarterback in there that can be the quarterback of the future. So there's a lot of different ways to go. I don't think it's a bad option at all that the Lions, if they feel like they could benefit from moving Stafford right now, I think they could, just because of his trade value. And that's ultimately the route that they're almost forced to take. I don't know if Stafford would necessarily be like, hey, I have to be out and you guys are going to trade me. That just doesn't seem to be in his personality, but maybe he would be a little bit more forceful. But it sounds like it was mutually agreed upon that it's maybe best for both parties that they just part ways.
Well, we all see the speculation out there. Some people have him going to Indianapolis, which I think would be a great fit. The hot rumor today was San Francisco. My thing is, what can they get in return for him? Do you think he's worthy of a first-round pick? I know Indianapolis has been, they're not afraid to part with the pick if they think they can get an impact player, and I think Stafford could do that. Washington even. I've seen a lot of crazy scenarios. Dallas, who knows? If you had to make a prediction right now, your gut, what would you think? Where do you think he might end up, and what kind of a compensation do you think Detroit might be able to get for him?
So I still think the Colts would be the best landing spot for him, and the Colts draft pick is a little further down in the first round than the 49ers. And obviously, yeah, it's great to get a higher first round pick, but if say the Colts wanted to trade for Stafford, they're probably going to have to give up more mid-round picks in order to get him. But I do think a first-round pick is the bare minimum for him. And it needs to be a team that's going to go after Stafford is a team that's probably a quarterback away. They feel like they have a roster. They have a window to get to a Super Bowl. They just need a really good quarterback to come in there and give them a chance. I don't think you're going to see teams that are necessarily in a rebuild go after Stafford, just kind of the same situation as the Lions. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but you hope that there's a pretty strong market, and it sounds like a third of the NFL has at least inquired about Stafford. So that's a decent sized market, and there's probably a few teams that are super interested in him. And I think that's probably the Colts and the 49ers. And I think both spots would be good landing spots for him because they both have defenses. They both are able to run the ball, and that's something that combined Stafford's never had. Stafford's never had a top half of the league ranked running game, which is crazy to say. He's been in the Lions organization for 12 years, and not once have they finished in the top 16 teams in rushing. And in defense, they've had a top 10 defense, once? Like they had that one good year, and they won 11 games that year.
Yeah.
So I really think that the Colts, there are reports about the 49ers, and there's probably some truth to that. I imagine the 49ers are making a big push, but I think it really comes down to probably the Colts and the 49ers. But who knows? Weirder things have happened.
Logan Lamourdier is joining us here on the Captain Lou Extravaganza as we talk Lions football. A lot going on in Allen Park as the off season has started, but as we mentioned at the top of the interview, there's never an off season anymore. Logan, you and I talked back in August when we did a preview for the NFL season, and you and I both kind of agreed that this was a make or break year for the Bob Quinn, Matt Patricia regime, and obviously they didn't make it. Were you surprised that they pulled the trigger before the end of the season?
No, not really, because everyone kind of knew after the first 2 seasons, it seemed like we had a pretty good idea of what Patricia and Quinn were together.
Mhm.
Now they were going to have to make drastic changes and just do a lot of things differently than they had the past 2 years. And you just didn't see it, right out of the gates. It was like, this seems like it's the same old team. Nothing's changing. Patricia seems to be stuck in his ways, his philosophies that he has. He doesn't want to bend on them or budge on them one bit. And having no pass rush and not emphasizing pass rush. And I will give him a little bit of credit that I felt like they did mix in some zone here and there more than they did last year. But for the most part, you knew what you were going to get every week. And maybe the worst part about it was it seemed like they kind of handcuffed Stafford. That 2019 Stafford with the first 8 games with Darrell Bevell, where he was taking deep shots, leading the league and pass, air yards downfield. That wasn't there under Patricia. And then just coincidentally, once Patricia left, Stafford was right back to where he was in 2019 with Darrell Bevell as the head coach. They were taking deep shots and it was working. The offense seemed to be clicking, and that was without Kenny Galladay. So when they fired them both, I think it was the right time. I don't think it really would have mattered if they waited till the end of the season, because the season was lost anyways.
Yeah.
But at least they gave Darrell Bevell a shot, and it was kind of nice just from a fan perspective and watchability to see a little bit more offensive juice. And the defense, they just didn't have the player.
Wow.
I don't think they could really make any defense work with the talent that they had on the field. And then you look at the injuries they're dealing with, it was just a bad situation all around. And for a defensive guru at head coach, you can't have a defense that's setting records for historically bad defenses. That's not supposed to be it.
No, you're right. And it just kept mind-boggling how progressively worse it got. Excuse me. You read the reports. You're closer to the locker room than I ever will be. You see the guys coming out, former players, and even some of the other players, how toxic it was there under him. And I've never heard anything like it is about the amount of ex-players that came out and said, that we're happy to see him go. Was it really that bad in the locker room?
So Sports Illustrated has locker room access. I usually stay behind the scenes, so I'm not going to lie and say I'm in the locker room or anything like that.
All right.
But I do hear, from other people kind of certain things. But I think it's pretty apparent even on social media. Sometimes that's where you get the best lines and the quotes.
Yes, you do.
And true. Yes, tweets are probably deleted pretty quick after something's said, but it's too far gone after that point. So I just think the fact that you saw so many players, former players that were under Patricia in Detroit that were, almost celebrating when he got fired and liking posts that, people were talking about Patricia and they were glad he was gone. And it is a little odd because when Patricia came to Detroit, I felt like he was almost talked about as being a player's coach. And there was plenty of players in New England who said, they really liked Patricia. But again, and when you're not winning and you're preaching and really being really tough on guys in a losing situation, I'm sure that rubs plenty of people the wrong way. And I think that's how the Patriots, how Bill Belichick is. And I think the only way you can really get away with that is if you're winning, because it's a trade-off and players understand that, hey, if we do what he says, we'll win. But when it's the exact opposite, when you have a dictatorship type of approach as a coach and you're losing, that really rubs a lot of players the wrong way when you're basically throwing players under the bus. And
wow.
So it seemed like it was pretty bad from just from afar, even social media, just watching the players. And it's kind of interesting too. You look at the players that use social media the most on the Lions team. They all ended up leaving Detroit not too long after Patricia got there. And so I think that probably was the case, is he just didn't like dissent. He didn't like, any players speaking up or anything like that. So it is. I'm glad the Lions kind of went in the complete opposite direction of what Patricia was. And that's typically the case when you have one coach has a philosophy doesn't work. You want to get as far away as that as possible and go completely to the other end of the spectrum.
Logan, after he got let go, it was announced that they were going to they hired a committee led by Chris Spielman, who's going to stay there full time, Barry Sanders, and they hired Brad Holmes as a GM. Now, did Holmes have any say at all in the hiring of Dan Campbell, or was that predetermined?
Well, it seems like if you look at the timeline, the Lions had already liked Holmes or liked Campbell before they officially hired Holmes, but it sure sounds like Holmes at least had a list of coaches that he would have liked. Campbell was on there. I can't imagine that they would just hire Campbell without consulting Holmes and at least giving his blessing. So it is kind of interesting just looking at the timeline, but it seems like there were at least discussions making sure that they're on the same page before it happened.
And, do you think that Campbell and Holmes knew that Stafford was thinking about requesting this trade, or, do you think they had an inkling of this, at least Campbell did, before he took the job?
Yeah, that was definitely on the table, and Lions ownership, I guess Stafford had requested or at least talked to ownership, about the possibility of it happening. And it seemed like the Lions, Rod Wood and Sheila Ford Hampton, Spielman, all, every interview that they had, it sounded like they at least mentioned something about it, that might be the case. So I don't think it caught anyone completely off guard or anything like that.
And Dan Campbell, like you said, he's the antithesis of Matt Patricia. He's a rah-rah guy. At least he is up front right now, and winning will cure all evils, as you said. And it's funny, he kind of took a hit on the national media for, his first press conference when he wanted to bite some kneecaps. But boy, I tell you, he's really on paper putting together one hell of a coaching staff.
Yeah, I really like just even above the coaches, the front office.
Yeah.
Just all the hires that they're making. It really seems like they're giving, Bob Quinn had a ton on his plate. It was more than just about personnel, but he also had to deal with a lot of other things like admin type of stuff. And now that's going to be Disner's role, who was a carryover from the last regime, but kind of an up and comer. He was the cap specialist under Bob Quinn, and the Lions have been in great cap situation for the most part ever since Quinn arrived, and Disner arrived at the beginning of 2019. So the last couple of years, but I kind of like the structure that they're doing with, scouting, and, Holmes is going to have a bunch of help, but then you even look at the roster under Dan Campbell. And that was one of my biggest fears, is anytime you hire a head coach with no experience, especially not even playing calling experience. Campbell was a tight ends coach, but he's been an assistant head coach for a while. He had his interim stint in Miami a few years back. But outside of that, you just wonder, okay, like, what is this guy's, how do you gauge his knowledge of X's and O's? And you imagine it's pretty good, but when it comes to the NFL, you want someone who's elite at that. But if you create the type of culture where players want to go there, and you put the right staff around Campbell, I think it can succeed. So I've been pretty happy. Their defensive coordinator, yes, he is a first-time coordinator, but again, was getting head coaching interviews. Anthony Lynn, their offensive coordinator, was most recently a head coach with the Chargers. So he has experience, but they have a lot of former players. I think that just brings a relatability aspect to that locker room, which would be nice. But they're bringing in a lot of really solid hires, I think. And if you notice, it's all these guys had options, and they're choosing to go to the Lions. And I think that's a really big testament probably to just what Campbell, his aura, and, kind of his personality. People want to go play for that, and they want to build something in Detroit, which is nice to see.
I really like the John Dorsey hiring. He put together, helped draft that team in Kansas City, and helped work up Cleveland a little bit. And, the one that stood out for me on the coaching side too is Deuce Staley. Could have went to Chicago and a couple other places, and he chose Detroit. I know it's early. As a Lion fan, I'm not going to lie. I'm fired up. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid again, but I think it's like you. I think they made some solid hires.
Yep. And I feel like we say this a lot as Lions fans.
Yes, we do.
It's not typically, there's not many hires where you're like, oh, this is going to be awful. And so, you have to see it translate to the field. And at least I feel like there's going to be a good shot. There's going to be some growing pains, but hopefully by the time the roster starts getting turned around, you're bringing in new players, opening up some cap space, and getting rid of the Patricia players that he brought in to fit his specific defense. I think by that point, hopefully, there's enough experience, and there's a lot I like about the coaching staff. And it's just, I think it's going to take time though. And you have to be patient.
That's something we don't see a lot of, but I think with giving him a 6-year contract, that shows that they're willing to put the time in to wait and let him build that. Logan, what is Ron Wood's? What is he going to do? I know he's the president, but what actually is going to be his responsibility?
So he's always been about the business side of things,
Okay.
fan experience. And ultimately, I think that's still what it's probably going to be. I know a lot of people get caught up because he even said in his first press conference, he's not
I
a football
remember.
guy. And so that really rubs a lot of people the wrong way. It's like, why do anyone making personnel decisions have to go to him to approve things? And I think if he understands, he knows he's not a football guy, he shouldn't give much pushback to really anything. It's like and I can't say that for sure that he doesn't, but I can't imagine, especially with Spielman there. Spielman's role is kind of unique. Not every team has a Chris Spielman. He's basically a special assistant to Rod Wood, and I think he probably, yes, very obviously understands the X's and O's and personnel and the type of player that the Lions might want. But ultimately, I think Rod Wood will still be just the business side of things. And yes, he's not an owner, but he's kind of taking on that form where things have to get approved through him. But I can't see him ever being like, oh, well, I watch so-and-so and I like this player better. Like, I don't think it's ever going to be that where he's making roster decisions based on film he's watched or anything.
Well, it's definitely going to be an exciting time for the Lions coming up. And as you mentioned at the top, it's there really isn't an off season. Now, Logan, what do you do now that I know you're on the Stafford watch, like all of the rest of us are here in the Detroit area? But with the quote unquote off season, what do you turn to? Do you start preparing for the draft, free agency? What is it on your plate now this time of year?
So typically once the Lions season's done, I go right to the draft, and free agency's mixed in there too, where, I really start to look and see what guys will probably be available and, what makes sense. And this season's going to be a little bit more difficult just because we don't know necessarily what type of players that the Lions are going to be looking for, what's going to be scheme fits. And you start looking at connections of past coaches and, who's available on the open market. But for me right now, I really take during the NFL season. Yes, I watch college football, but I don't really do a ton of scouting. I kind of watch college football just to enjoy it.
Sure.
And, do some side scouting here and there. But for the most part, I wait until the NFL season's done. And then I really start digging into the film of college players and starting to put together a list of players I like and just doing research and, the combine. I'm really disappointed that the combine's not happening this year. It's still happening in a way, I guess, but it's basically just sounds like glorified pro days, and they're still figuring that all out. But the Senior Bowl's going on right now. It'll be over at this point by the time people are listening, but that's always fun too. So it's really, for me at this point, is just watching a lot of film on draft prospects and trying to figure out, who will be good fits for the Lions, who might be available at selections they have. And it's kind of fun this year because for the first time in forever, I feel like the Lions, they're quarterback needy. So, those top guys might be an option. So that's going to be fun, really digging in and scouting the quarterbacks of this draft class as well.
Are you watching the Super Bowl, and who's your pick?
Yeah, of course. I feel like the Chiefs are the better team. And every time I've doubted Brady the past couple of games. I think he's well past his prime, but I've always been a Brady fan because he is from Michigan. I know a lot of people are sick of Brady and thought he was just going to go away. And of course, his first year on a new team, and he's right back in the Super Bowl, which is crazy. So it's really tough to bet against him, but I just feel like the Chiefs, they should win. And if they don't win, it's probably just going to be due to some weird things happening or Brady playing out of his mind, just having like a typical Brady fashion type of game where he shows up in the big moment and wins. But that really, you look at, against Green Bay, I felt like Brady throwing 3 interceptions and, you still come away with the win. That doesn't happen often in the playoffs. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm kind of disappointed it's the last game of the season in the NFL.
Oh, I know, it's flown by like it does every year. I'll tell you, for me in the Super Bowl right now, I feel like Matthew McConaughey in that movie 2 for the Money when he's in the bathroom. You almost flip a coin. I really believe that it's going to be that good of a game. Last question for, and I'll let you go. You mentioned, where the Lions are quarterback needy. Do you really think that there's a chance they take a quarterback with that 7th pick?
Yeah, I think there's definitely is a chance. And I know if you follow me on social media, I've basically stated multiple times that I don't think the Lions have to draft a quarterback this year. I think you've seen a lot of other teams that have inserted a rookie quarterback or a cheap quarterback onto a well-rounded roster, and that's what's able to propel them to the Super Bowl. You saw it with the Rams, you saw it and now Goff is supposedly being shopped. You saw it with the Eagles, and Wentz got hurt, but they still won with Foles. But Wentz was like an MVP candidate that year, and both those guys are kind of on the outs with their teams. So it's Kansas City's another one. Patrick Mahomes is still playing under a cheap contract. Yes, he got a big, huge deal, but his cap hit hasn't hit yet. But I think there is a way to win if you have a really talented roster and building the roster, and then you get the quarterback and you have a nice 4-year window where that rookie contract is nice and cheap and you have a roster already in place. And I really want to maximize that rookie contract. Now, if there's a guy on the board for the Lions at 7, where it's a true franchise QB and you can't pass him up, I don't blame them one bit for taking him. And so I think it's very possible that they take a quarterback, and it might happen. But my biggest concern would just be by the time the Lions roster is actually competitive, it's going to be in line for that young quarterback to get its payday. And you're kind of right back to where you started with Stafford, so I don't know. We'll see what happens, but I still have a lot of homework to do on these quarterbacks. It's a very strong class. At least it appears that way. I feel like you can say that quite a few years, every year it seems like there's some really good quarterbacks. There's always some late risers, but I think I wouldn't be upset if the Lions took a quarterback, but I totally get it if they don't, which might upset some Lions fans.
Well, Logan, thanks again for taking time out tonight. It's been an absolute treat, very informative. Good luck with the quote unquote off season, and we really enjoy your work, and keep up the great work.
Well, appreciate it. Yeah. Thanks for having me, and we'll have to talk again soon.
All right. He's Logan Lamourdiere from Sports Illustrated. All things NFL, all things Detroit Lions. We'll be right back here on the Captain Lou Extravaganza on Michigan, or on 12 Ounce Sports Radio and Zingo TV, channel 761. And of course, that was Logan Lamourdiere. We did that interview on Thursday, right before we found out on Saturday that Matt Stafford was traded to the Rams. We want to thank Logan for taking time out of his schedule. I know he's been busy, and we'll talk more about Matt Stafford and the Super Bowl and all of that in the last half hour of our show. But hey, let's get back to the Captain Lou Extravaganza guest line, which of course is sponsored by Ken Ryan at Voya Financial Advisors. Give him a call at 517-420-5669. And we're pleased to be joined by a friend of the show, my tag team partner on Aquinas College Hockey, Mark Van Vliet, the Director of Hockey Operations for Aquinas. Mark, how are you tonight?
Lou, I'm doing great.
It's
awesome.
Awesome.
Always a privilege to be on your show. Looking forward to it.
Well, the pleasure's mine too, Mark. This is it's great to be talking hockey. We got a chance to get the rust off and do a game last Saturday night. Wasn't quite the outcome that we were looking for against a very powerful Adrian College team. But Mark, like I said, it's great to be back and seeing the boys play hockey.
Yeah. Well, first of all, before we even get to the Adrian game, as I mentioned, I think we talked about it on the broadcast. Right now, we just feel so fortunate to be playing. And after a 10-month hiatus and, a lot of, as as everybody is still sort of wading through this, a lot of questions, not a lot of answers, not a lot of information, a lot of confusion. But boy, we feel so fortunate to be playing. And regardless of the outcome of this past weekend, a lot of smiles on the kids' faces just to be able to be back.
Oh, 100%. You and I had talked on, off the air, on the phone, whatever, about the trials and tribulations the boys and you as coaches have gone through. That the unknown factor, when you're going to play, when do you start practice? Do you have to stop? It's talk about the anxiety that you all have gone through since, like you said, last March.
Well, certainly there's been that. I think one of the, one of the burdens that head coaches like Coach Pomoda, and all these other coaches that are sharing, whether it's NCAA or ACHA, the kids are looking to them for guidance and leadership. The school then is dictating to them about the direction, or in some cases the lack of direction. And so the coaches find themselves in the middle. Certainly Coach Pomoda with Aquinas, he's trying to get directions, trying to sift this all through. The school is sort of wading through the directives from the state of Michigan. We see what's going on in other states that are much more permissive and open. Our kids certainly know that because their friends or their colleagues or former teammates are playing in other states, and those states may be open. In other states, they may be restricted. And so, a lot of confusion. And, the coach sort of bears the brunt of that. And the coach is sort of, on the front lines of what the school is saying. So, they're caught in the middle, and then that's a difficult position to be in. And I think, Coach Jordan and I have talked about this, since the Nationals were end of the season. The Nationals were canceled last March. You just got to take it one week at a time, one day at a time, and keep the kids to the extent that you're able. Try to keep the kids engaged, motivated, looking forward, and because they look to you, the school is looking to you to disseminate the information. The kids are looking to you to provide the information, and it's just an extremely difficult sort of a tap dance, and it can be frustrating. But I think the most important thing that Aquinas is doing, Coach Pomoda specifically, is it's just like, hey guys, we got to play Adrian last week, the number one team in the country, and then let's get that weekend out of the way, and now we're going to worry about our opponent for the next weekend. We're just going to take it a week at a time, and we're going to be thankful for every week that we have, and that's about the only thing that you can take out of it at this point.
We're joined by Mark Van Vliet, the Director of Hockey Operations for Aquinas College, here on the Captain Lou Extravaganza. Mark, as far as the practice goes, I know I've talked, it was different this year. I mean, just like everything else, we know that, but they had, even getting on the ice, I've heard where they had to use their own pucks and things like that. Boy, I tell you, it's just, this has just been a crazy 12 months and a new experience, even practicing.
Yeah. So, there was, mandates coming down from, the state of Michigan, and, we had confusion whether the governor was able to do this, and then she transitioned some of that responsibility to the Department of Health, but and then of course they tried to they try to implement rules and things like that. And there's obviously there's football, there's basketball, there's hockey, there's cross country, different types of sport, different levels of contact, and a lot of ambiguity between each sport. And that was sort of the tap dance on this. And so a lot of it was open to interpretation, not just from a coach's standpoint, but from an institutional standpoint. So Aquinas was interpreting the rules and applying it to or interpreting it for their athletes. Another school right in Grand Rapids may interpret the rules entirely differently or partially different. And so they do one thing in practice or are allowed by their school to do one thing. Our school may be prevented from doing some of those things. And of course, again, hockey is a small world, a small sport. So these kids are talking and they're texting back and forth between their teammates, and there's just a lot of questions. So again, we just tried to make the best of it under the rules, under the umbrella that we were provided. And I think that's really what you got to do moving forward. But again, you're right. 1 week to the next, the key is flexibility, and that's what we are preaching to our kids is like, hey, just be ready for change. And the people that can manage through this chaos and keep a level head are going to be the people that come out on top.
Well, and I think a lot of that is going to be I think you guys are going to be okay with that, because I look at your senior leadership that you have, Mark, on Aquinas, and these kids have been there for 4 years, and
Yep.
they're good kids on and off the ice, and I think that they can they can handle it, and I'm not too worried about that.
Well, right now, again, we talked about this during the broadcast, before the broadcast last weekend. We always viewed the first semester as a marathon, and the second semester as a sprint. We've sort of done away with the marathon, and now we only are left with the sprint. And so be it. I think these kids are they feel fortunate that they're able to play any games,
right?
And that's really the context. You can sort of you can complain about what should have been a 34 game schedule and hopefully postseason play and all that. But quite frankly, it's a level. Nobody has that right now,
right.
And so many schools, especially in the ACHA, the non-school sponsored programs that can't afford the testing or don't want to deal with it, they're just not fielding a team this year. So many teams like that. And then you got areas like in the Detroit area, Michigan Dearborn just canceling their season outright, even though it's a school sponsor sport, but they're in sort of a high area for testing and for exposure and things like that. So they just said, hey, we're done with athletics for the year. But so our kids see that, they read about that, and they're just fortunate to play sort of a truncated schedule of 12 to 15 games, followed by a WAC tournament, and then hopefully a postseason invitation if it comes to that, or if that in fact happens. But
right.
Everybody's happy that they're playing, and whether it's a 15 game season or a 35 game season, they're just gonna savor the moment, and especially as we talked about for those seniors that have come so far in 4 years. I know it's a little bit of a you'd like to see them play the full season, but they're just happy that they're able to finish their career at least playing, rather than have something having the rug pulled out from under their feet.
Mark, as funny as I watched them Thursday night, and then Aquinas, and then on Saturday, if you thought there was going to be a rust factor, the first shift on the ice, the first hit, there was no rust. And those kids, you could tell just in the joy. Yeah, they came out on the wrong end this weekend, but the joy, and I thought they represented themselves very well this weekend.
Well, yeah, actually, I think if you looked at the whole weekend in its entirety and put it in context, there's some very positive takeaways there. If you're Aquinas College, if you're Coach Pomoda and his staff, there's a lot of positives to take away. And again, just the fact that you're playing, and again, we go back to this, but some teams. And I think Adrian was one of them. They had games in October. They were able to fit in some first semester games. There was, they came back after Christmas and were able to jump in right back into play early in January. Aquinas, they took another path. They elected to stand back a little bit and implement slowly. So whereas a team like Adrian was able to play 6-8 games. This was our first weekend. And so a lot of ambiguity, a lot of different things happening at once. In previous seasons, everybody starts the first week of October, right? And so it's sort of a level playing field in terms of the way the season develops. Here, some teams start early, some teams are starting later. And so right now, it's tough to get a clear picture of who's going to arrive at, if in fact there are nationals at the end of the year in April. It's tough to get a clear picture now who's going to end up on top. But And that's not to take anything away from Adrian. They're obviously the number one team in the country for a good reason, as we saw. But there's a long way to go for Aquinas. Nothing. There's going to be. Coach Pomoda knows what to do. He sees where we need to be improved. I think obviously the kids recognize that, and so there's going to be improvement over the next 6-8 weeks. And so it's way too early to sort of prematurely crown anybody a champion.
Yeah.
But and you can throw ratings out the window, rankings out the window this year. I mean, it quite simply doesn't mean a whole lot at this point. And it shouldn't, because teams are just trying to get back on the ice, trying to get normal, and that's what we're sort of working on right now. But we'll see what happens in a couple of months. But yeah, it's good to be back. And the score was a little misleading, although again, not taking away anything from Adrian. That's probably one of the best ACHA D1 teams I've ever seen.
Yeah, they definitely were firing on all cylinders on Saturday. They came out and I don't, like you said, I think there would be some NCAA D3 teams that would have had all they could handle with that team on Saturday. Let's switch gears now. Let's talk about the conference again. You've got Indiana Tech, Lawrence Tech is going to be right there. Of course, Rochester, Cleary, and Concordia are maybe a little rebuilding, but we've talked about this time after time, and it seems like whenever Aquinas plays these teams, they run into a goaltender that seems to stand on their head. How many times did we run into goaltenders last year, Mark, that had 60 saves against us, and it was a struggle to get some of those wins, and I don't see it changing this year.
No, and in fact, I think even more important, and we just talked about this, the confusion of the year, and sort of just how people, the ambiguity and the uncertainty. I think that creates an opportunity for even the teams that are considered in a rebuilding mode. It's about being prepared. It's about being able to handle confusion, about handling adversity, and able to sort of roll with the punches. And if you're able to sort of wade your way through that, you're going to find yourself in a very in a great position, because you're capitalizing on the confusion. And I think probably this year, more than any year I can ever remember in my life for hockey, 40 years, that this is the kind of year where the team that just sort of is mature, that sort of rolls with the punches, doesn't get rattled, and takes things as they come, is going to be able to surprise people. And so, just like you had mentioned, obviously this past year or this past week we get done playing the number one team in the country, and this coming weekend I think we play Cleary, and one would expect that to be, the tables might be flipped a little bit from a who's favored standpoint, but again, the situation that we find ourselves in right now creates sort of a level playing field. So I'm sure, in fact, I know that Coach Pomoda is going to say, look, guys, now that the script is going to be flipped a little bit, we're going to be the favored team this weekend, but let's not be arrogant, because, as you mentioned, we might run into a hot goaltender. We might be running into a team that is waiting through this time of uncertainty in a way that makes them confident, and so we have no idea what to expect, but boy, you'd be at your peril to think that you're going to arrogantly go into Detroit and come away with 2 points in this kind of season just because you think you're better than them. I think that's not the message you want to preach to your kids, and I think there's an element of truth to that.
We're joined by Mark Van Vliet, Director of Hockey Operations for Aquinas Hockey, here on the Captain Lou Extravaganza. Mark, the preseason poll had Indiana Tech ranked number one. They're always there. Frank DeCristofaro always has a great team down there, and they had you guys second. I think Lawrence Tech third, and some fun games are going to be coming up later in the year as well.
Oh, Lou, when you only have 12 or 15 games on a schedule, they're all fun now.
Yes.
And they're all, and the other thing is they're all critically important. In past seasons, you would view the October and maybe early November, you could sort of get things tuned in. Record was important, but it wasn't overly so because you had plenty of games in front of you where you could sort of get things corrected and right the ship, so to speak. But now you don't have that ability, and a 4-point weekend is huge, not only for the Wolverine Hoosier standings, but seeding in the WAC postseason play, and then if you're invited to nationals, that would come into play as well. So, huge opportunities every single weekend. Frank DeCristofaro, he's always got his teams well prepared. They're in Indiana. They're under a whole different type of guidelines from a COVID standpoint. Much less restrictive, so they've been kind of going right on through this, playing games. They played Liberty, I think, and they played a couple other teams, Adrian, and so they've had many more games under their belt to this point than we have. So they're going to be formidable, and he always has his guys prepared. Ken Gaffney, he always has he's building, and they've been incrementally taking steps every year, and we had our hands full with them last year. I think we got swept. We got swept the first weekend we played them, and I think we returned the favor and swept them in the second semester. But Ken doesn't. I'm sure his boys aren't going to forget that. So his folks are going to be prepared. So it's wide open. And then again, Concordia and Cleary, as we talked about, from what I saw and what you and I saw of Concordia and Cleary, they had the foundation of a successful future. You could see that these guys they're well coached, they're young, and they're building, but you can see the building blocks being laid with those organizations. So you knew that those teams are going to be formidable in the years to come. And so another year has passed, and I would expect those teams to be a significant step better than they were last year, which is kind of scary quite frankly.
Oh, I agree with that. But it's like you said, they're all going to be fun games now.
Yeah.
Mark, let's real quick. I want to get your opinion on a couple of things.
Oh yeah.
You watched the Red Wings. You watched the NHL playoffs last year with no fans. We had a taste of that last weekend with no fans in the stands. Now you've got a limited. I think 4 or 5 barns are allowing fans. A little different this year watching the Red Wings. I know they're struggling to start, but they're young. What do you expect to see out of Detroit this year?
Well, Lou, as we talked last game, and then that's a leading question that you're setting me up with. I don't expect much of the Wings this year, and I'll tell you why. I think they're typical Coach Blashill coached team. They're going to play hard. They just don't have enough top end talent to break through in any consistent way. And one of the things that I think Steve Yzerman is doing, to his credit, but it's sort of hidden. I don't want to say hidden from the public, from the common hockey fan or just the Red Wing fan. But when you see a general manager that keeps his top line talent in Europe, I mean, these guys are not even going to the Griffins, right? Yeah. That leads you to believe that this is a bit of a throwaway weekend. They're still paying off, I believe, Zetterberg. I know Zetterberg, and maybe some of these other guys that they're dumping salary, they're creating cap space, and they're acquiring picks, and you can just sort of see that they're setting in motion they're going to be great position for next year. And I think they're going to be, instead of sellers, they're going to be buyers. This is going to be another tough year to live through. I don't expect much. They're certainly not going to make the playoff. I see the effort. I'm encouraged by the effort. I see the Larkin line, that top line. But they just don't have enough horsepower from top to bottom. So I think it's going to be another tough year. They're not going to make the playoffs. But I think when I see what's happening, they took on some salary. They took up some cap dumps from other teams like Stahl, the defenseman from New York. They took on him in his $5 million salary as a salary dump from New York Rangers, and they got some picks for that. And they're just acquiring picks, and a lot of those people. Johan Franzen is another one. I think they're paying off yet. So those guys are coming off this year. I think they're going to have a tremendous amount of cap space next year, plus draft picks. And I think once you see Schneider and some of these guys, these upper picks that have been placed in Scandinavia and in Europe, they're going to be called back. They're going to be expected to contribute. And then now I think you're going to have to live through this year to get to next year. And next year, I think you're going to really see the resurgence. But this is going to be, and it's a 54-game schedule. Yeah. It's again, it's a bit of a sprint instead of a marathon, as we've talked about. So we're just going to have to get through this. We're going to be done with the season in March or April. But I think the real focus is going to be on next year, and I think that's the way we're going to go.
Last question, I'll let you go. We've got this important football game coming up Sunday night.
You know, it's a culturally significant event.
That's a good way to put it. I think I might have to watch a little bit of it. I'm trying to figure out where to get my. Go ahead.
I'm going to my daughter, my son-in-law's. We're going to pick up the Kentucky Fried Chicken, get some ginger ale. We're going to go over there and.
That sounds good. We're trying to figure out where to get our chicken wings from. If I'm going to make them in the air fryer or what, but.
Lou, it is a Super Bowl, so if you have to go get deep fried wings, that are immersed in the oil just for the one, this is an important event. I don't know if I would. I would go air fry. I would go deep fry for just this occasion. I'd go to Buffalo Wild Wings and load up on those that honey barbecue.
Okay. On that note, all right, I'm going to put you on the spot. Who do you got?
Lou, I got to be honest with you. I think Kansas City's going to roll them.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's. I would love. It's one of those head-heart conversations.
Yeah.
My heart goes with Brady, but when I look at Kansas City and the weapons they have, I think it's going to be Kansas City. However, if it's within striking distance at halftime, I might begin to sway to Tampa Bay. But I think Kansas City has the kind of power that they might be up, a couple of scores, at least 2 to 3 scores by halftime. Then I think the game is done. But I think for football, and quite frankly, for the year we've had as a country, I think the best thing is this thing was tied, 27-27, 2 minutes left to play, and Brady comes trotting in the field with just under 2 minutes, no timeouts left, and Brady comes on the field and marches that team down. I'm telling you what, as a country, it would be like Maalox, right? It would just be it would be so good for us as a country just to watch an amazing Super Bowl, and I think that would just be a real treat to watch. But I got to tell you, I think it's Kansas City, and I think they're going to roll.
Well, on that note, Mark, I can't wait for Sunday, and I obviously can't wait for Saturday night to get back with you for another call of Aquinas College hockey. Hey, as always, thanks for coming on tonight. This has been a treat, and we'll talk to you Saturday night.
Lou, it's always a privilege, and I'm looking forward to this weekend, Saturday, and being and obviously Sunday watching the game.
All right, thanks, Mark. We'll talk to you soon. Mark Van Vliet, the Director of Hockey Operations for Aquinas College. Always a treat having Mark on, talking hockey. Great perspective, great insight on what they went through this year as far as practice goes, and just getting themselves prepared mentally, too, to play. And, it's like I mentioned to him, the coaches, too, you don't want to take anything away from the players. The players are the ones that are on the ice, on the court, on the field, whatever. From a coach's perspective, this has got to be tough because they're getting it from all sides, too. Kind of caught in the middle, as Mark said. And my kudos out to them. I've talked with, the head coach that I do play-by-play football for, Kevin Townsend of Freeland in Michigan. And, he's, you could tell he was chomping at the bit. He had no answers, but he had great kids. And so does Aquinas, and so do all these teams. Not enough credit is given to the kids as well, their perseverance. And I think that they're stronger than we give them credit for sometimes. And hopefully on a high school level here in Michigan, they can get the green light to play sooner than the 22nd. Who knows right now? It's a mess, and if we have time later on in the show tonight, we'll talk about it. We're going to step aside, take a break. When we come back, top of the hour, Steve Finnemore, our NBA and NCAA basketball expert in general. He's going to stop by, and we're going to talk hoops in the next half hour. And then the last half hour is all Super Bowl talk, Matt Stafford trade talk, and who knows what else. You're watching the Captain Lou Extravaganza live here on the 12-Ounce Sports Network and Zingo TV. Channel 761.
Welcome to MyBookie. You're ready to create an account and start making money, and we're here to help. And remember, you can get a bonus of up to $1,000 on your first deposit. Now you're ready to bet. Just go to mybookie.ag, visit the sportsbook, click on your bet, and input the amount you want to risk or win in the bet slip. Yes, it's that easy. Just remember, at MyBookie, you play, you win, you get paid.
At Amazon, we're pretty good at getting things done. We're pretty good at solving problems. COVID-19 is the biggest challenge we've had to face. But challenges are what motivate us. Like flying masks to our employees around the world. We're doing everything we can to get you what you need, and doing everything we can to keep our people safe. I'm former Navy pilot Sarah Rhodes, and I'm proud to lead our Amazon Air network.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Captain Lou Extravaganza live here on the 12-Ounce Sports Network and Zingo TV, Channel 761. Want to mention, don't forget, coming up tomorrow night, 8 o'clock Eastern Time, we're going to premiere a new show here on the network. Yours truly, Captain Lou. We're going to do our Captain Lou Wrestling Extravaganza with my tag team partner, Matt Gamlin, of course. He's been on the show talking sports with us and wrestling for the past year or so. And, we're gonna branch out. It's going to be a 1-hour show from 8 until 9. The Captain Lou Wrestling Extravaganza live here on the 12-Ounce Sports Network. And that'll be from 8 until 9 tomorrow night, right after the Logan Ward show here on 12-Ounce Sports. So really looking forward to that. Matt and I are going to have a lot of fun with that tomorrow night. We're going to recap everything that goes on in the world of professional wrestling. We'll go back in history a little bit and, just give you our little twist in the world of professional wrestling. So that's 8 until 9 p.m. tomorrow night live here on the 12-Ounce Sports Network. And don't forget, you can watch a replay of the Captain Lou Extravaganza on my website, which is captainlou.net. Check it out. We've got some articles on there as well. Also, check out our website here, 12-Ounce Sports Network, as we have some great articles that are posted on the website. We invite you to check that out. Let's head back to the Captain Lou Extravaganza guest line, sponsored by Ken Ryan at Voya Financial Advisors, 517-420-5669. Give them a call. That's Ken Ryan at Voya Financial Advisors. And speaking of our guest line, we're joined by a friend of the show, Steve Finnemore. Steve, welcome back. How are you, my friend?
Captain Lou, thanks for having me. Appreciate being back on your show.
Hey, it's always great talking hoops with you. Gosh, I see Michigan State has given Iowa all they can handle tonight.
Yeah, they actually are. And, I heard some chatter today about the point spread. I think Iowa's minus 9.5 tonight. So I think right now the Spartans are hanging in there when it comes to the point spread.
Well, let's hope that they can bounce back. I know Iowa's a good club. And, before we get into talking about John Chaney, who passed away, I was looking at bracketology today, Steve, and, this is some crazy times with Duke not projected to be in, Kentucky, MSU on the outside, if it were to start right now. It's just, these are some crazy times.
Yeah, they really are. I see all the bracketology talk, and like you mentioned, Kentucky, Duke, and Michigan State. It is crazy. There's no other way to put it. But I'll tell you what, the one team that has been doing okay, and you're talking the last 8, 10, 12 years, is the Villanova Wildcats. And I just love watching them play. And, of course, Gonzaga's getting through, Michigan's getting through, but they're on pause now. So, there are bright spots, and there are teams like Kentucky, Michigan State, and Duke that are struggling.
They are, and I know it's funny, Steve, is programs go through cycles. It happens to the best of them. Look at Michigan football. They can't seem to be able to get over the hump. And, I think there's still an opportunity for somebody like State to bounce back. I know the year's far from over.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of time left. I don't know, what's going to happen with the Big Ten tournament. If they have it, they can make a run there. Tom Izzo coach teams always, for the most part, thrive the second half of the season. They figure things out. They get the rotation down. Players get more confident. Like tonight, like you mentioned, they're only down 5 with 6 minutes to go. And I think they're going to make the NCAA tournament because I think as good as people say the Big Ten is, Lou, I still think it's pretty, there's a lot of parity. It's pretty wide open for the most part. So Michigan State on any given night can beat any of the top teams.
I wanted to ask you a question. I know we will get to our main topic in a little bit, but I was thinking about this when I was looking at the standings in all the conferences. I look how Alabama's doing good, and justifiably so the ranking they get. I look at the Pac-12, and, the history of it. They've got only, Steve, one team ranked, and they've got some teams with decent records, and that just, I'm surprised by that.
Yeah, I believe UCLA, right, is the only team ranked?
Yes.
Yeah, and they're not even like a very high, profile team this year. Mick Cronin used to be the coach at Cincinnati, doing a good job there. They're rebuilding. But like you said, like Arizona, you would think every year, if you probably looked back, they were probably in the top 20, every single year. So things happen. It's just like you said, Lou, it's a crazy year. And even Gonzaga, their conference, they're the only team from their conference in the top 25. They're probably going to win every single regular season game. So, we'll see what happens in the NCAA tournament. But, hey, Lou, I got to tell you something about Gonzaga. Last year, they only had 2 losses. They were 30-2, I believe, or 31-2. The only 2 teams that beat them were BYU and the University of Michigan.
Wow.
So Gonzaga, they're going through this cupcake schedule, the WCC. We'll see what happens in the NCAA tournament because you never know. Hey, Lou, when I saw Virginia lose in the first round a couple of years ago to a 16 seed, UMBC, I said to myself, anything can happen in the tournament.
Yeah, agreed. And it's funny is, you talk about teams going undefeated. I see Drake is undefeated. It made me, I don't know if it was something that you posted on Facebook or I saw it where Rutgers and Indiana were both undefeated back in '76. Am I not correct when they went to the tournament and both made it to the Final Four? Is that right?
You're absolutely right. Rutgers was 26-0 in the regular season. Matter of fact, Lou, if you can catch it, the Big Ten Network has a great special on that Rutgers team. And I remember I was 11 years old at the time, and I was just starting to get into hoops, and I was playing a lot. And I heard the older guys in my neighborhood talking about Rutgers, and they were 26-0. They lost in the Final Four. They lost the consolation game too. They used to have that back in the day in the tournament. They lost to UCLA in the consolation game. So Indiana went on to win it. They were undefeated, and it was the last time it actually happened.
Yeah, that's right. You had a UNLV or Duke team back in the early 90s, and now we've got a Drake team that there's a possibility that they could run the table as well this year.
They kind of remind me of that Indiana State team from '79 with Larry Bird coming from that type of conference and going through the whole season, and they're facing Michigan State and losing to the Spartans in the finals. We all know, magic against Bird. And it's also like, the Loyola team from a couple of years ago from the Midwest. They had a great season. They got to the Final Four. So, the great thing about college basketball, Lou, you never know what's going to happen in March, and that's why they call it March Madness.
Oh, I'd love it. I'm geared up for it already, and it's unfortunately 6 weeks away,
Right.
Hey, I wanted to talk to you. We lost a legend. John Chaney passed away this weekend at 89. And unfortunately for me, I remember watching him and everything. You don't get the grasp of what he meant, as far as I didn't anyways, in college basketball, because I didn't really pay a whole lot of attention to Temple, but they were always good. Oh, being from the Midwest, we didn't pay a whole lot of attention to him. But the more I read about him and the things that he did, what a phenomenal person, let alone one of the best coaches of all time.
Well, obviously, Lou, it's awesome that you're bringing him up because he's one of the best of all time. I don't care what they say about him. He didn't make a Final Four. That's okay. He just did things the right way and the way a coach is supposed to operate a program. The great thing, and we can talk for hours about John Chaney. Yeah. I'll try to break him down in a nutshell, and you can continue. He started as a middle school coach, and he moved up to high school, and he coached at the high school ranks. He paid his dues at the Division II level, where he won a national championship at Chaney State, and then he got to Temple, and they weren't very good at Temple. Matter of fact, I think the 10 years prior to him arriving there, they were only in the NCAA tournament once. So he turned around a program, and he did it the right way. He used some old school tactics. He was a strict disciplinarian. He had 5:30 a.m. practices. So he did a lot of things that I don't think necessarily, Lou, it would go this time of year, 2021. I don't think if kids would buy into it. I don't think parents would buy into it, administration, because he was really hard on his players, Lou. And he's one of the all-time best. I'll never forget, Lou, in 1988, actually, I think it was, they were 32-2. They were the number one team in the country for the last 6 weeks of the season. They lost to Duke in the regional finals. They were one game away from the Final Four. So that was his best year in 88. So he'll definitely be missed. And I'll tell you what, the passing of John Thompson from Georgetown, those guys were kind of similar to me. Not only were they African-American, but their values, what they stood for and what they tried to teach young men. So I think those two guys, John Chaney and John Thompson, had a lot of similarities, Lou.
Well, I got to tell you, the only story that I have about John Chaney is kind of funny. Is I was going to Central, and it was back when they were recruiting Mark Macon. And Charlie Coles was the head coach.
Yep.
And we were talking, and Charlie was a nice guy. He was so approachable for especially the student journalists back then. And we asked him, we said, and we knew you couldn't mention it by name. And we said, Coach, we know that there's a recruit that's high on your list. And, it's coming down to, and he said, don't even, and he stopped us. He said, there's a coach in Philadelphia that I don't stand a chance against. He said, I would love it, but I don't stand a chance. And that's all he said. And that's my John Chaney story. And, Mark Macon went on to be an All-American, and he really flourished under him.
Lou, I gained more respect for your basketball knowledge tonight because a lot of people forget that Mark Macon from Saginaw played for John Chaney at Temple. And Lou, that freshman year when Macon was at Temple was 1988. That was the year they went 32-2. And he was their leading scorer, Lou. If you look it up, he averaged 20 points a game. And you won't find that in a lot of programs where a freshman guard comes in and he's the leading scorer of a team that's 32-2 and goes to the regional finals. So for John Chaney to put the ball in his hands with 2 or 3 other pros on that team,
wow.
Future pros, allow Mark Macon to do that really tells you a lot. You know what I would love to do, Lou, if it's possible? Yeah. I'm going to try to track down Mark Macon, and I want to ask him. I'm going to talk to him about his recruitment by John Chaney, because I bet that would make for a great story.
Oh, I bet it would too. Because in the other thing I remember about that, the process was they showed a picture of him. I'll never forget in the Central Michigan newspaper, the CM Life, I can remember a picture with him standing next to Dan Marley, and it said Marley and Macon in '88. And I'm thinking, wouldn't that be something? But obviously it didn't come to pass. But yeah, but that was back when Central, they were good. That was the year I think they.
Yes.
It was the year they went to the tournament and played UCLA in the first round, and Pooh Richardson and the boys just. Lit them up in that first half. I can remember like it was yesterday,
Yeah, Lou, I found a great quote today. I was going through some notes, and I found a great quote from John Chaney. And he said, I'm not going to stick a lollipop in your mouth. I'm going to coach you like a man, end quote.
Love
it. And I thought that was really cool. And the only other guy that I see close to that kind of mentality is a Tom Izzo.
Yeah.
Coach is always talking about coaching guys really hard and turning them from boys into men, after their 4 years at MSU. So kind of what I touched on earlier about that tough love approach. And that was John Chaney in a nutshell.
And he played for did I hear right? He played for the Harlem Globetrotters for a couple of years back in his younger days.
I'm not really sure, and I'm not too familiar on his playing days. I should have researched him more. I knew we were going to talk about him, but I'm not really too familiar with his playing days. I just remember him, being at Cheney State and winning a D2 national championship. To me, Lou, when I study coaches, which I've been doing for many, many years, when guys start at the lower levels and work their way up, they get much more respect from me as opposed to some of these guys now who, just because they played in the NBA or they played college ball, their first coaching job is like a really, really good job. Yeah. I don't really respect that process. To me, you got to go through each step and learn the ins and outs of coaching.
Kind of like broadcasting, and I try not to get upset when a guy like Tony Romo or somebody like that gets in there and is making $15 million a year. I can remember starting out, and it's funny, the Howard Stern approach, making $3 an hour and and hoping you had running water in your bathtub, but and I hear the stories about the coaches that start out going out for cheeseburgers and whatnot. I agree 100%, and you can't really say a whole lot about it because then you sound like you got sour grapes, but you're right. I'm right there with you. So, I saw you mention earlier in one of your posts on Facebook about you think that Baylor might even be a little bit better than Gonzaga. They're playing really well this year. I can't seem to argue with you.
I just hope you don't tell me the score of their game against Texas tonight, because I'm recording it. It started at 7. So while I'm watching the Michigan State game, as soon as this game is over, I'm gonna turn back and watch Baylor and Texas tonight. I've watched Baylor 4 or 5 times this year, and I really think they're just as good as Gonzaga, maybe better. I think if they played 10 times, I think it'd be split down the middle, 5-5. I don't know. I can't really say this team's better than the other, but I would not count Baylor out because I tell you what, Lou, they're tough, man. They play together, they defend, they can score, they're well coached. They have a lot of the characteristics that Gonzaga has. So I don't want to say I hope to see them two in the finals because you never know what would happen.
Right.
But if those two can make the NCAA championship this year, it's going to be a treat.
You know, and you mentioned it earlier when we were talking, Villanova, again, right there. Jay Wright's doing a phenomenal job. And, I think my surprise team has got to be Alabama. I didn't see them being a top 7 or top 10 team this year. They're playing lights out.
Well, their head coach, Nate Oates, used to be the coach at Romulus High School here in Michigan. And Nate did a tremendous job there. He packed up his family, left his teaching job at Romulus to take an assistant's job at the University of Buffalo, where, he worked for Bobby Hurley. And once Bobby Hurley left for Arizona State, they gave Nate the job at Buffalo. He did really well there. And then Alabama came in. I tell you what, Lou, though, here in our backyard, you look back, and if you go back and look at all these so-called experts, some guys, they picked Michigan to come in 7th or 8th place in the Big Ten, and they're a huge surprise this year. Juwan Howard has done a tremendous job. And don't be surprised, Lou, if Michigan slides in there, goes on a run, and winds up in the national championship game. Because I tell you what, they have all the pieces. I don't know a weak link in their lineup and their rotation, guys. So be careful for Michigan. They can get in there if they keep playing well and stay healthy.
Steve, what worries me about them is their break. Obviously, they're off for a couple of weeks. I look at what happened with Tom Izzo's team at Michigan State. They came out and, it's just one of those years. I get it. But like you said, they're not out of it by any means. But, boy, I've never seen a team come out. They just couldn't hit a bucket, and it's one of those nights.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what, they're back, man, because they're playing great tonight.
Yeah.
2-point ball game with 1 minute to go, and they're right there with Iowa.
Nice. That's fantastic. Hey, let's switch gears if we could. Let's go to the NBA side.
Sure.
I look at I've been watching it as best as I can, and there's been some surprises, but then again, not many. My one surprise, you and I talked at the beginning of the year. We weren't too sure about how Doc Rivers was going to fit in with Philadelphia, and right now they've got the number 1 record in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, they're 15-6. Doc's doing a great job. I think some of those guys, especially Joel Embiid, they're buying into him. I think when a coach comes in like a Doc Rivers, with some credibility, I think guys, start to look and say, hey, Tobias Harris is playing well for them. I mean, I like their team. The East is wide open. I still think Milwaukee is going to come out of the East. But, hey, ever since Brooklyn, picked up James Harden, they started playing well, scoring a ton of points. I think the East is wide open with those 3 clubs. And then out West, the Clippers are looking good. And how about the Utah Jazz? Talk about – you asked me who the surprise team was. I said the Denver Nuggets might be, but – tell you what, the Utah Jazz, man, they've surprised everyone with a 15-5 record.
You mentioned a name that I want to bring up, and he played for the Pistons for a while, Tobias Harris. That guy has been under the radar. Wherever he goes, he's a workhorse. He's a solid performer, and now he's starting to get the limelight, and he's starting to get the recognition he deserves. Always loved him. I was really sad to see him leave Detroit.
I never understand, and I guess I don't poke around too much or deeper into it. I never understand why these types of guys like a Tobias Harris wind up in so many different teams. Like, why? What is it about him that you wouldn't want around your program and your club? So, I'm with you, Lou. The guy plays the right way. He plays hard. He seems to be a great teammate. He makes big shots. I mean, I saw him beat the Lakers last week on a last-second shot. So, it's like it's you scratch your head, and I'm saying to myself, goodness gracious, why is he with so many different teams? So you're onto something there. He can be the guy. And you know what? Philly's got a great chance to come out of the East, like I said.
Do you buy into the theory that the Nets should try to trade Kyrie Irving for some defensive help?
I'm back and forth on that actually, and I'm on the fence with it at times. I think those three guys, I've watched them a lot lately. I got the NBA League Pass. I try to watch them as much as possible. I mean, they're scoring a ton of points, and that's the key. That's what they want to see.
Yeah.
I think when it comes down to it, I think they're going to be okay because they have pieces around them like a Joe Harris. They have Landry Shamet. They have some guys who can really help in those areas. So I tell you what, I've gained a lot of respect for Kevin Durant this season, coming back from that terrible injury. He's really played really well. And then you have James Harden, who I really, really believe. James Harden, to me, is like a Russell Westbrook. They get a bad rap because they shoot a lot. But those guys share the ball, and they play really hard. So, they're a wild card, man. I'd watch out for Brooklyn because they're one of the teams I think that can come out of the East and play in the NBA championship.
Well, that's what everybody's been saying, and it's what worries me about them, Steve, is that you get the old mentality like Houston had, and I hate to. Well, I'm going to say it anyways. The Mark D'Antoni, Paul Westphal, no defense. It just. Defense wins championships, and it still does. The Lakers played it against Miami. They had a little more star power. It just that's the missing ingredient with that team, in my opinion, is when it comes down to the Eastern Conference Finals against either Milwaukee or possibly Miami, they could get hot, or Philadelphia. If they're giving up 130 points a game, they're not going to win.
You touch on a great point, Lou. The Paul Westhead teams at Loyola Marymount, we all remember in college, they didn't play much defense. If you go back in the 80s in the NBA, the Denver Nuggets were similar to what you're talking about. The Nuggets can score a ton of points, but they gave up a little bit more than what they scored. So you're right. You got to find that balance. And at the collegiate level, I think right now Gonzaga is actually, a team. See, the problem I have with Iowa when you talk about these kind of things, Iowa gives up a lot of points. Like tonight they gave up 78 points to Michigan State. Now I know Michigan State's a good ball club, but you can't give up all these points. I know they've given up in the 90s a couple of times this year. I think Gonzaga had 99 against them early in the season. So Iowa's got to get better on defense if they want to take that next step. But you're right, defense is what wins the championships.
And a team I know that you had said earlier in the year when we talked at the beginning of the NBA season was the Clippers. They're still doing it. They're right up there, number one in the West. Paul George and Kawhi are leading the way. I know they had to sit out a couple of games because of COVID, but they're right there with them. And you can call them dysfunctional if you want, but they're going to be right there in the end too.
I still think as long as LeBron James is healthy, I still think that they're my favorite to win the West. I know it's going to be a battle. I mean, I can see the Clippers, doing it. I can see the Jazz. But I really think that the Lakers, man, the more I watch them, and I know they have, I think, 5 or 6 losses, but, anytime LeBron James steps on that floor, Captain Lou, it's going to be tough for the opposing team.
And you know what's scary is it seems like he's digging down, and I hate comparing him to MJ, but he's starting to dig down into his playbook and finding things to motivate him at this age. And I like that. I like how he can do that, and he can turn it up a notch. And, he's 35 years old, 17th or 18th year, and he's the man. And like you said, as long as he's there and healthy, they got to be the favorite.
I oftentimes while I'm watching the Lakers at night, I'll text a friend of mine and I'll say, I really think LeBron is very, very close to being considered the greatest of all time. Lou, the way he passes the ball is just incredible. The way he rebounds, his leadership on the floor. I'm a little disappointed in him, but I'm not going to criticize him. I'm just disappointed in him from the incident from last night with that fan courtside. I wish things like that wouldn't occur to him, wouldn't happen with him. I understand it. Someone can say something. The fans, I think they have a responsibility too, because Lou, I know people will fight me on this, but I think just because you buy a ticket and you sit close to the court, I don't think that gives you a license to scream at players and rip them and things like that. So I think that's the one thing I thought he should have walked away from last night.
You know, in my stance on that is there's a difference. You can go and boo and yay or whatever.
Yes.
But you can't heckle. And
yes.
You know, they kick hecklers out in comedy clubs and whatnot.
Yes.
You can't heckle. And yeah, you're right. Just because you spend the big cheese to have those courtside seats, that doesn't give you carte blanche to do that. And I'm with you. I wish he could turn the other cheek on that. And I've never been in his shoes, you know, and I'll never have that issue. I mean, where, you know, when you're good, it's like they say, when you're on top, people like to tear you down, and they'll go to any length, you know?
You know, it's amazing if you think back to when he was in high school and his first couple of years in the NBA, how the media and the fans just adored him. You know, he was on the cover of Sports Illustrated when he was in high school. And we all just like, we were in awe of him. And then we built him up. And then gradually we start to tear him down because he's on top. And that's what it's really like. I remember Derek Jeter talking about that one time in an interview. You know, the Yankees, you know, are the same way. You know, when they win, you want to see them lose, and it's just I don't understand it in sports, so it's just something we got to live with.
Last question for you, Steve, and I'll let you get back so you can watch that Baylor and Texas game.
Yep.
Are you going to take time out Sunday night to watch that important football game that's going to be played in Tampa?
You know, I am. I really am, because here's the thing. I watched the Saints and the Buccaneers a week or two ago because I wanted to tune in and I wanted to watch greatness, you know, over the length of time. I wanted to see Brady. I wanted to see Bruce. I haven't watched much football this year. I'm familiar with the Kansas City Chiefs, defending Super Bowl champs. I'm going to watch it. I'm pulling for Tom Brady. And here's why, because my wife was laughing at me when I said this. I think the Tom Brady story is incredible. Okay, coming out of high school, coming out of college, where he was drafted, how he got the starting job with the Patriots when the one quarterback went down with an injury, the success he's sustained over the years, I'm a big fan of that. I don't buy all that cheating stuff, anything else, Giselle, you know, breaking up with his wife, blah, blah, blah. I don't care about that drama. I'm going to go for the Buccaneers that night. How about you?
Well, you know, I'm leaning that way. You know, John, or I don't know, Joe the Bookie or whatever. As far as that goes, have you ever seen the movie Two for the Money?
No, I haven't.
It's a gambling movie, and towards the end, I don't want to.
Oh, I gotta see it.
It's a great movie. It's a great movie with with McConaughey and Al Pacino and Rene Russo and Armand Asante. It's a great movie.
See, I love Asante. I love him.
It's a great movie, but towards the end, you know, when he bets, he flips a coin, and I'm just about to that point. You know, it's like
yes,
and it's going to come down to Sunday before I make any kind of $10 wager. But no, tonight I'm gonna probably go with Kansas City, but my heart is saying Tampa. Let's just say that.
What's the point spread on it?
Last I saw it was a 3-point spread, 3.5. Kansas City's favored.
Okay. Hey, Lou, before you let me go, I want to leave you with a quote from John Chaney that I found. And John Chaney talked about coaching, and this is what Chaney said. He said, "It's never been a job for me. It was always a passion." Wow. And I wrote that down. I had it in my quote files, and I pulled it out, and I thought that was just amazing. It's never been a job for him. It was always a passion. I love that.
You know, and those are words to live by, because if you do anything – it's not work that you love, and that's like what we do, what I do here, and what you do watching basketball and coaching it and helping out. I want to leave you with a Tom Brady tidbit, and you might know this already, but you know that he split time with Drew Henson, right?
Yep.
And you know that your boy George Steinbrenner signed him so he wouldn't beat Ohio State.
That's right, man. Hey, but Brady, I don't know what number he was picked in the draft for. It was like 184th or something, or 186th. I mean, that's just incredible what he's done over the years.
Oh, I know. But, Steve, as always, this has been an absolute treat. I love talking basketball with you. I learn something every time I talk to you. I appreciate it. And enjoy the games, and enjoy the football game this weekend, and we'll talk in about a month or so. We'll get an update on what you think, how you think everything's going.
Thanks, my friend. I appreciate you having me. I really do, and keep up the great work.
Thank you. All right, Steve Finnemore joining us here on the show. Again, one of our favorite. He's our basketball guy, without a doubt. And great talking about John Chaney and that quote, "It's not work, it's a passion." I love it. Absolutely love it. I love it when he leaves us with quotes like that. And, John Chaney was amazing. And he really helped a lot of kids back in the 80s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. Hell of a run with Temple. Like Coach, from what Steve said, never made it to the Final Four, but he was always right there. And they were, just absolutely loaded teams. And, again, a lot of successful kids because of him. John Chaney, the longtime Temple coach who passed away this past weekend at the age of 89. Well, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to get into the Super Bowl talk, as promised. We're going to talk about the Matthew Stafford trade a little more in detail, as, of course, he was traded to the Los Angeles Rams for a slew of draft picks and Jared Goff. And we'll talk about another quarterback that might be on the move or two. So stick around. We got lots to go until the top of the hour, 10 o'clock, when Mike Said It First will take over the final leg of our Triple Crown here tonight. And Mike's got some great guests lined up. I think he's got one that's a superstar in the making. You might want to check that out. We'll be right back. You're watching the Captain Lou Extravaganza live here on the 12 Ounce Sports Network and Zingo TV, Channel 761.
Welcome to MyBookie. You're ready to create an account and start making money. And we're here to help. And remember, you can get a bonus of up to $1,000 on your first deposit. Now you're ready to bet. Just go to mybookie.ag, visit the sportsbook, click on your bet, and input the amount you want to risk or win in the bet slip. Yes, it's that easy. Just remember, at MyBookie, you play, you win, you get paid.
At Amazon, we're pretty good at getting things done. We're pretty good at solving problems. COVID-19 is the biggest challenge we've had to face. But challenges are what motivate us. Like flying masks to our employees around the world. We're doing everything we can to get you what you need, and doing everything we can to keep our people safe. I'm former Navy pilot Sarah Rhodes, and I'm proud to lead our Amazon Air network.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Captain Lou Extravaganza live here on the 12 Ounce Sports Network and Zingo TV, Channel 761. Thanks again to Steve Finnemore for joining us. Always great talking hoops with him. Great insight. Always, as I mentioned to him, I always learn something when I talk to him. And, great stories about John Chaney and, kind of bleeding into some stories about basketball here in the Central Michigan area back in the late 80s. And, of course, the NBA talk. Could talk to him for 2 hours going over certain things and in the NBA and college hoops. And he brought up a good point. Michigan State is not dead in the water yet. And, they're starting to get their sea legs back. Great effort against Iowa tonight. They did lose by 6, but, they're coming back. If they play like that, they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. Could make a deep run in the Big Ten tournament if they do indeed play. And so, again, want to thank Steve Finnemore for taking time out of his schedule. This is his time of the year, man. Loves watching basketball. You heard him. He taped the Baylor-Texas game. So, we're going to let him watch that. Won't give the score of that game here on the network tonight. I did see that Fred VanVleet, 54 points for Toronto, franchise record. Mike said it first. He'll go over all of that with the NBA coming up at the top of the hour. He's going to talk Matthew Stafford trade. I mentioned he's got a superstar in the making on his show tonight. That's right. I sat down with Mike, and we did a little interview with him last night. So I'm going to be on the show with him along with other guests. So stick around for that coming up at the top of the hour. Also want to thank Mark VanVleet for joining us, Director of Hockey Operations for Aquinas College. ACHA Hockey Division I, teams are getting back in action. We've got about, I think, 6 weeks left of the regular season, maybe a little bit more. National tournament, as of right now, is scheduled to go April 15th through the 21st. And so it's getting into high gear. And as he mentioned, an abbreviated season for a lot of the teams. It's just, unfortunately, with the COVID and the restrictions and the unfortunate thing with the ACHA is with the teams, the club teams with their funding, it's just difficult to do the testing. And I think that's the biggest hurdle. And so, they got to keep safe and whatnot. So a lot of schools have opted out for the year, but there's still quite a few left. And, we saw last weekend probably the best team in the country and one of the better teams that I've seen in a while in ACHA hockey. And that's Gary Astalis' Adrian College Bulldogs. Gary was on the show a few weeks back, and their team is primed. They are just rolling on all cylinders right now. And so we hope to get some more ACHA coaches on. Next week, I've got a lead on a couple of them. I'll have them posted on my Twitter page and also on my website, which is captainlou.net. And, of course, Logan Lamandier in the first half hour of our show. The interview took place last Thursday, and, of course, that was before the big trade here in the Detroit area. One of the biggest trades football-wise I think we've ever had here in Detroit, and that was the Lions sending Matt Stafford to the LA Rams for 2 number ones in the future, 22 and 23, a third-round draft pick this year, and Jared Goff. Now, first of all, I want to say good luck to Matt Stafford. For those of you that have watched me here on this show now, going on 3 years here on the network and listened to me on my other podcasts throughout the years, I've been a Matt Stafford guy since day one. The guy has gotten little, if any, help with with the Lions organization over the years. The 1 year that they were 11-5, they had a top 10 defense, and they went to the playoffs. And if it weren't for a bum call, going down to get a 2-score lead with 3 minutes to go, they probably would have won that game on the road in Dallas. And so, but that's been they were in the playoffs in 2011. They got beat by the Saints. And then in 17, they lost to, or was it 16? I can't remember now. They lost to the Seattle Seahawks wildcard team. Detroit hasn't hosted a home game in the playoffs since 1994, I believe. So it's been 27 years. Matthew Stafford got drafted, in 2009. And, if you can find me a tougher quarterback in this day and age, you're going to have to prove it to me, because there's nobody tougher physically than Matt Stafford. Now, he's going into a great situation. And, there's been talk that Carolina they had a deal in place, or they had an offer for the eighth overall pick and something else to go for Stafford. I don't know if they were going to get Teddy Bridgewater or not. San Francisco, supposedly, what I had heard, someone that I'd talked to said that they had a couple of seconds and a third or whatever, and Detroit they were going to talk it over and get back with them on Monday. This was, of course, as of last Friday, and then LA came in Saturday and just swooped them, brought in a deal that, to quote Vito Corleone, an offer that they couldn't refuse. And it's a great offer. I think both teams win. Detroit, they weren't going to win this year. They may, there's always a chance. In the NFL, you never know. It's amazing to me how. But I listened to the Los Angeles reporters, the way they're just tearing Jared Goff to shreds. I'm going to ask you a question. Now, I know he had a couple of clunker games earlier this year. They lost to the Jets. They lost to Miami. He gets injured and has thumb surgery, okay? Doesn't play in that Arizona game, I understand. Doesn't play in the opening round playoff game. The guy, did you see his thumb? He could barely grip the ball. And, this is all, Sean McVay's the hero. The GM Snead, came out and said there's a quarterback competition. You knew Goff was gone. We didn't know he was going to Detroit, but we knew he was gone. His days were numbered. I'm looking forward to having Jared Goff here in Detroit. I love what the coaching staff is doing, what they're putting together as a coaching staff, and I think they can work with him. Now, like I said, I wish no ill will on Matt Stafford. I think, I hope, if Detroit doesn't win a Super Bowl, I hope they do. I would love to see him with a ring. But I'm here to tell you, the 3 toughest jobs anybody can have in the city of Detroit or the surrounding areas here in Michigan is the starting quarterback job, starting goalie, or the closer on the baseball team. But if you think that's pressure, Matt Stafford's got it now because they're going to L.A. and they expect nothing less than a Super Bowl. They haven't had a number 1 draft pick now in L.A. since they drafted Goff 5 years ago, and now they're not going to have one for a couple more years. They're going to go 7 years without a first-round pick. They're set up to win now. Anything less than getting to the Super Bowl is going to be considered a failure. Is that going to matter to Matt Stafford? We're going to wait and see. But he's going to come under pressure that he hasn't had here in the Detroit area. And I hope he's up to it. I really do. He deserves it. Like I said, he's put in his time. He's had absolutely nothing to work with for a running game here in the Detroit area with the Lions. I mean, they had, what was the stat I saw? 11 games that he's played in 12 years where they had a 100-yard rusher. 11. That's not even one a year. So that's probably why he's had to put up some of those gaudy numbers just to keep Detroit into games. They've had, it's been a mess. And, Detroit's starting over again. Now they've got some potential. That P word again. I love Dan Campbell. I love what he brings. He's got that enthusiasm. But, now, and they hired Anthony Lynn to be his OC. You got Aaron Glenn going to be his defensive coordinator. Deuce Staley coming in. Dom Capers as a defensive assistant. Are you kidding me? They've got some people that know what they're doing. And the thing is, they want to come here. And Jared Goff wants to be here. He's saying all the right things. I'm excited for it. And this is kind of nice because Detroit doesn't have to draft a quarterback, although some of the mock drafts have them drafting a quarterback. They don't have to. They could draft one in the 2nd or 3rd round if a Mac Jones is available or Trask out of Florida, or they can wait till next year if they want to do that. They can get off, linebacker help or defensive line help. So I think the trade benefits both players. I really do. And it now sets up what's going to happen with Deshaun Watson. All of us here on the network and all the talking heads and everything else have got their opinions. I still think it's 50-50 if Watson's even going to go anywhere. He might still stay there. It could get ugly. He's not going to want to play. They're going to eventually have to trade him. Here's my thing. Are they going to trade him? Ideally, if they trade him, they're going to do it before the roster bonus. He's not going to get traded before the Super Bowl. I'll tell you, it's a toxic situation there. You think it was bad in Detroit. at least I like the direction they're going. They hired a young coach. Houston hired somebody 65 years old that I don't know. I just don't know. And Deshaun Watson, I'm still of the camp that, he signed a contract, and he knew what he was getting himself into. He signed that contract extension after they got rid of Hopkins. So he knew what he was setting himself into. Sure, anybody could want to go to another team. But I don't feel sorry for the guy. Everybody thinks he should be, get his way. What kind of precedence is this going to set? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see on that. Is he going to go to the Jets? Are they going to trade him to the Jets? That seems to be the landing spot. If he went to San Francisco or Indianapolis, you'd have to put them right there in the mix to contend for the Super Bowl. If I was him, I'd go to San Francisco because I think they have a better shot at going to the Super Bowl, because as long as a guy by the name of Patrick Mahomes and a coach by the name of Andy Reid is in Kansas City, that's going to be a huge roadblock. It's going to be that way for a couple more years at least, until they start running into salary cap situations where they're going to have to make some interesting decisions with the salary cap. And, it's one other quarterback that I want to touch on before we go to break, before we take our last break, is Aaron Rodgers. Now, I was listening to an interview with TJ Lang and Pat McAfee this afternoon on SiriusXM, and they brought up a good point. He may not be holding them hostage or whatever, or there's going to be hell's revenge or whatever, but I think you could see Aaron Rodgers. They bring up a great point, and I got to give him credit. He could go to management and say he wants to do what Tampa Bay wants Green Bay to do, what Tampa Bay did for Tom Brady. Went out and got Gronk. Went out and got Antonio Brown. I wouldn't be surprised. And he's got the leverage. You all know me. Everybody knows me now. I am not an Aaron Rodgers guy. I don't like his smugness. I don't like, his arrogance. I think, his narcissistic tendencies. But the guy's a winner. And, he's proven that. And, I don't know what else he can do to get Green Bay to the Super Bowl, except maybe run for it on 3rd down and goal or take advantage of interceptions. But he wants some more weapons. I don't know what kind of weapons, but I know he's going to go to management and say, hey, you got to get me some players or else I'm gone after next year. And I believe that's what he's going to do. He's not going to go anywhere this year. But he's right. I've had time to think about it, and he's right. Nobody knows what's going to happen, especially there. Who knows? But anyways, so again, with Matt Stafford, good luck. Thank you for everything that you've given us here in Detroit. They play LA next year. That's going to be a fun game. He deserves, and another point was brought up with the Detroit management, with Brad Holmes, the GM, and their team. They could have traded him to Carolina. They could have traded him to Chicago, or the Jets or New England. He didn't want to go there. I don't blame him, but they traded him to LA to give him a chance to succeed. Free agents are going to see that. They're going to see that. That was a great move by the Lions to do that. And again, in return, they got a haul. I love it. And I think they can really benefit from those draft picks. I know they're going to be high end, in the 20s and whatnot, glorified second round picks. But they're still extra picks, and they're first round. And who knows, maybe they can package them up next year or whatever. We'll see. But it's capital. And they got a starting quarterback back. They didn't trade him for draft picks and have to start Chase Daniel or put a rookie out to the Wolves. If they want to go with a rookie quarterback, they can at least have Jared Goff for this year. and then next year they can decide what to do. But I have a feeling, Jared Goff, you talk about the chip on your shoulder. Goff's got something to prove to L.A., and Detroit's a pretty good place to start to have that happen. So I look forward to it. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I get it. But that's where I'm at. We're going to take one more break. When we come back, I'll give you my Super Bowl predictions. We'll go through some prop bets. It'll be a lot of fun. Don't go anywhere. You're watching the Captain Lou Extravaganza live here on the 12-Ounce Sports Network and Zingo TV, Channel 765. Welcome back, everybody, to the Captain Lou Extravaganza live here on the 12-Ounce Sports Network and Zingo TV, Channel 761. About 10 minutes left here before we make way for the man, the myth, the legend. That, of course, being Mike said it first. And we wanted to say thanks to all of our guests that came on here tonight as well. It looks like I might have muted the commercial. I beg your pardon. Sorry about that. Hit the wrong button. Anyways, Mike's coming up at the top of the hour, and he's got a guest-filled show, and I'm sure he's going to talk more about what's going on in the NBA and also in pro football. I know he's got his show Sunday, so he may not give his Super Bowl pick yet, but I'll give you mine here in a few moments. It's funny is it's going to be a different Super Bowl. I think they're going to have 22,000 people in Tampa, but it's a step in the right direction. You know, I wouldn't expect them to fill it. It would be awesome if they did, but they're not going to fill it. I was looking at some of the prop bets, and it's some interesting ones. And I'm going to put a 5 or maybe a 10 spot on this one. The over/under for rushing yards for Tom Brady on DraftKings is half a yard. Now, how can you not make a bet on that? Half a yard. I'm going to put a little wager on that Sunday afternoon. That's the fun one. I think the other one that interested me was Ronald Jones. I think his over/under for his rushing yards is like 36 or 37.5, I believe. So I'll probably put a couple of shackles on that too. Those are some of the things you look for. We've talked with our guests on the show tonight, and Steve Finnemore's going with Tampa, and Mark Van Vliet's going with Kansas City in a rout. He thinks it could be a easy game. It's going to come down to, really, I think it's going to be a close game. One of the things I'm looking for is the line play on both sides. Defensive line for Tampa, offensive line for Kansas City. As of right now, we're going to find out how big of a loss Eric Fisher is going to be to Kansas City. If it was any other quarterback right now, I'd really be worried. And I'd say Tampa is going to have an easy time of it. You got Patrick Mahomes. He's going to have to improvise. They're going to put heat on him. Definitely put heat on him. And, I don't know if Tampa has the firepower of Kansas City. The end of that championship game last week kind of scared me a little bit, or 2 weeks ago, with Tampa Bay's offense. Is that a fluke? Tom Brady with the interceptions didn't play his best half in the second half of that game. And it's so anti-Tom Brady. It's usually the other way around. Usually he gets going in that second half and he makes things work. But that's kind of what I'm looking at right there. That's my big key is going to be the offensive line play. The defensive line for Tampa is amazing. You know, Shaq Barrett, you've got Ndamukong Suh, Jason Pierre-Paul, you know, just some of the names on that defensive side of the ball. And you got the weapons. I mean, Chris Godwin, Scotty Miller. There's another one, a prop bet that I'm thinking about taking. Over under on the amount of receptions Scotty Miller is going to have for Tampa. What do you think it is? According to DraftKings, 1.5. I think he's going to catch 2 balls. So I'm going to go with that as well. Some interesting, some interesting bets, some prop bets. As far as the game itself, again, I would love to see an overtime game. I think that'd be fascinating. Not only because I've got Monday off and I can stay up and watch the whole game. I don't have to worry about getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go to work. I can actually stay up and watch the whole thing and not, go to bed with 4.5 or 5 hours sleep. I'm hoping it's a great game. And I think it might be. I think it's going to be a dandy. My heart says Tampa Bay. I've always liked Tom Brady. I would love to see him get his 7th ring. Kansas City, I look at the weapons and I look at the coaching. Bruce Arians, I've got to give him credit. I've never been the biggest Bruce Arians fan, but he's proved it to me. I stand corrected. But you've got Andy Reid, and he's one of the great minds in football over the last 20 some years, along with Bill Belichick. All Andy Reid has done is gone, to hosted 3 straight AFC championship games. The only other coach, and he hosted 3 straight NFC championship games when he was with the Eagles. He's adapted. He's adapted his mindset, his offensive mindset. And there's the potential for the D word in Kansas City, and that's dynasty. Their window is now next year as well. Then they're going to start looking at some salary cap issues in 2023. They're going to really have to tackle Tyreek Hill. Some of the other ones on the, Kelsey's going to be 35. It's going to be, they're going to have some decisions to make. But enjoy the ride because this is one of the better teams. But, it's funny. I'd liken this game to when Seattle played New England. After Seattle was going for the repeat. And it came down to the last play, or the last 15 seconds. Will we see a game come down to that? Will Tampa be able to dig that one out? Are we going to see back-to-back champions? We are. Kansas City's going to win 31-27. They're going to cover. Captain Lou says Kansas City 31, Tampa 27. No overtime, but it's going to be a dandy game. Pick the over. I think it's going to be over 56.5. I'll probably buy it down to about 50 or 51. Parlay it with Kansas City. Make a little bit of money. But it's setting up for a great game. So no air-fried wings, according to Mark Van Vliet. Just get the greasy ones from B-Dubs. We'll see. May end up doing that. Hard to beat an air fryer, though, man. We're in love with it. So, anyways, well, that's going to do it. The clock says it's time to make way for Mike Said It First. Want to thank Logan Lamoureux from Sports Illustrated, the Detroit Lion beat writer, for joining us. Great interview with him. Mark Van Vliet, Director of Hockey Operations from Aquinas. Very insightful. Always fun talking to Mark. Knows his hockey like the back of his hand. And Steve Finnemore, what can you say? Our basketball guru. He is the man, the wealth of knowledge that Steve has. And he shares it with us. And the banter that we have back and forth is just absolutely amazing. I absolutely love it. Treasure it when he's on the show. And I want to thank you, too, for coming on. Without you guys and gals, we have no show. And I want to thank you. And don't forget, coming up tomorrow, 8 o'clock Eastern Time, I'll be back with my tag team partner, Matt Gamlin, the Captain Lou Wrestling Extravaganza. It debuts tomorrow night, 8 until 9 p.m., right after Logan Ward. We're going to break down everything that goes on in the world of professional wrestling, including the Royal Rumble and the start of the road to WrestleMania. Hey, don't forget, keep your heads up, keep your sticks down, keep your feet moving, and as always, keep your minds open. Good night, everybody. Mike Said It First is next. You're watching the Captain Lou Extravaganza on the 12-ounce platform of networks, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, and, of course, Zingo TV, channel 761. Join a replay of the show tomorrow on CaptainLou.net. Good night, everybody. We'll talk to you tomorrow night on the Captain Lou